Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Twitch. So good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make the show each week. So thank you again, as always. Coming up this week on the podcast, it was the return of the late show at St Andrews, Saints edging a 7-goal thriller at Birmingham. There is so much to discuss with the panel this episode. And there are 2 home games coming up this week. First, Preston North End on Wednesday. Oli Hargreaves from the Butter Pie podcast is going to join us later on to help preview that one. There was also an FA Cup game at Liverpool earlier in the week. We'll look back over that defeat at Anfield too. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this week, Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb, Glen de Cour, writer of the blog League One -10, and Alfie House, senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 269 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start, as always, with the shout out to our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support our show. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And as well as supporting the podcast, each of the tiers has different perks. You get access to a special ad-free version of the pod. You get exclusive TSP t-shirts. There's the FPL, and you get access to our TSP events too. Now, if you're in one of our top tiers, do check your Patreon inbox for an invite to the virtual meetup, which we've got scheduled for the end of the month. And don't forget, we've recently launched a new look TSP shop. That's where patrons get a personal discount code. We're adding some lines all the time. Last week, it was the new ladies collection. And new additions this week include beanie hats and some pretty cool coasters, actually. There's a great selection of hoodies and t-shirts and mugs as well. If you want to go and check it out, the address is shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And if you want to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more details. You'll find all the links in the podcast show notes and on the YouTube description. Let's get into the football, shall we? Talk about dramatic winner 6 minutes into added time from Joe Aribo. Gave Saints all 3 points at Birmingham. Alfie, you were there. Did you see that one coming at the end? Did you give up hope? Did you think when we got that corner, this could be it?
Well, I think, to be fair, we've been given enough warnings now to not give up hope. I mean, it must be the 4th, 95th or later winner or goal and away from home this season. So I don't think I gave up hope completely. I mean, I thought in terms, let's get the negatives out of the way first, because I asked Russell Martin, what do you want to say about the game? I don't even know where to start. And he said that all 3 goals were absolutely shocking, and he's totally right. There's way too much space for the first one, shocking communication for the second one, and then they don't react anywhere near enough, quickly enough in the box for the third one. And they are some of the things that we have seen in this sort of 5 or 6 game spell where they've conceded, I think it's now 16 goals in 7 games maybe. So that isn't good enough. But the attack was, in my opinion, as good as it's been all season. I think David Brooks was an absolute creative force. Shea Adams missed a big chance, but he linked up really well, just sort of dropping into the hole, spinning balls off. Adam Armstrong was back to his best. He's got 7 goals in his last 6 against Birmingham. I think maybe 7 in 5. I think maybe something like that. He loves scoring against them, and I thought he was brilliant. He was involved in pretty much everything. And Will Smallbone was obviously excellent in parts as well and made a real statement. So I think I did expect something to happen, but I bet it was an amazing away end to be involved in. Another late goal. The only thing that I'm still unsure about is why we're playing one of the league's best players out of position in Taylor Howard-Bellis right back. And I know we've not got Carl Walker-Peters, and that's probably the reason. But it's a little bit strange to me. That being said, I thought Taylor and Jack Stevens both actually played really well. But there's clearly a bit of a disconnect in the back line at the moment. They're conceding way too many goals, and it's something that Russell Martin knows he's going to have to sort out.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's something they're going to look at. We will speak to somebody who was in that away end in just a moment. He sat there smiling in the corner. Just a quick sort of recap of what happened. If you missed it yesterday, behind within the first 2 minutes, then level through Adam Armstrong. Stanfield put Birmingham ahead just before half time. Brooks got the second equaliser. We were then in front through Che Adams. Birmingham went down to 10 men. Bacuna levelled on 77 minutes. And then Joe Aribo with a 96th minute winner. What was it like in that away end, Steve?
Yeah, good fun. And it was one of those. It kind of did feel like it was always coming. While it was obviously very annoying to concede that equaliser in the way that we did. I mean, I saw on a forum that I use elsewhere that there was a Birmingham fan on there, and he basically said we equalised too early. Because there was still 5 minutes plus whatever was going to be added, and we knew it was going to be plenty. And we'd been swarming all over them for the whole second half, so it wasn't as if that was going to change anything. Birmingham was still going to have to stick everybody behind the ball, which they'd done since half time, even with 11 men, and we still found our way through even then. So it was a case of just getting the moment. I mean, it was such a weird game in that we were so dominant for so much of it that on another day we could win that game 7 or 8-0. It was just bizarre. The goals conceded. The first one's off. The first one is so blatantly handball as well. The guy has basically punched it down into his path. The ball's slightly behind him, so there's no way that he's actually able to control that with his chest and put it into sort of into the way he's running. And that should have been a bit of a clue for the officials, really. The thing that annoys me about these sort of things is that we've only ever got one man at most complaining about these decisions. Bednarek was the only one that appealed with any sort of strength of it. It's a little bit frustrating. Second one, I've seen and heard. I mean, certainly in the ground, there are a lot of people pinning the blame on Ryan Manning for that second goal. But you could also clearly see afterwards, which isn't shown. I don't think it's shown on any of the footage. You could clearly see that Manning and Bednarek were having an argument in the penalty area afterwards, sort of inquest, and Manning was clearly saying, "Look, listen, I shouted to you." And like Manning wouldn't have had to move; he'd have had an easy header, and there'd have been no danger whatsoever. But Bednarek's come flying in, tries to win a header that he was never going to be able to get a full head on, and yeah, I mean, it costs a goal in the end. So yeah, I mean, as Alfie says, there's plenty of work defensively to be getting on with this week in training. That's for sure. Interesting that. Yeah, we still gave up those goals despite Flynn Downs being back in the side. But I do think that overall we were just so much more assured in kind of everything. It was weird that as a defensive shape we actually looked fine. It was just literally those probably 3 moments plus maybe the one where Bacuna hit the post as well at 1-0. And other than that, they didn't really get anywhere near us, but for them throwing bodies in the way and a couple of bad finishes, hit the woodwork a couple of times. Yeah, as I say, we could have had 7 or 8 on another day. But I mean, where's the fun in that? Last minute winner is always much more satisfying, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Always makes the journey home a bit better, doesn't it? I mean, Glen Russell Martin said afterwards, it's not a tactical thing. We're not getting carved open. It's just rubbish goals that we're conceding. He kind of, as Alfie said, he was quick to address the poor goals. It's just some bad mistakes. It's not going to take too much analysis when they sit down and they start looking back at these.
No, I think it's more simple. It's more nuanced than just saying Ryan Manning should have done better here, Bednarek should have done better on the second goal. I just feel like we'd cracked it. You know, during the 25 game run, we'd cracked it with the settled back four, goalkeeper Flynn Downs. Ever since, obviously, Flynn Downs got injured, we had to do something. I think we all kind of think that it would have been better off just doing a straight swap rather than trying to, with Shay Charles, rather than trying to use Will Smallbone in a role that he's not really suited to. As Steve said, Flynn Downs comes back yesterday, but we've got Taylor Harwood-Bellis playing at right back. Now, I don't know, but I have a theory that Bednarek wouldn't have made that mistake if Taylor Harwood-Bellis was next to him. And I'm not blaming Jack Stevens for it because he was nowhere near it.
Mm-hmm.
But the two of them dovetailed so well that Bednarek always knows where Harwood-Bellis is going to be. The amount of times they go up for a long ball and one of them leaves it, and they know that the other one's sweeping up behind, and that was the classic for that. That goal we let in was a classic example of that. I don't think Bednarek really wanted to head that, and if he was like, I need to leave this, I need to let this run. Oh no, I need to head it, and in the end, he ends up doing both or neither, and just knocking it through to Stansfield. It's a good finish, to be fair, but that goal wouldn't be out of place on the Veracity ground, would it? It's just a big welly up the middle, and it's a park goal. It's terrible. So I'm hoping that if Kyle Walker-Peters is back on Wednesday, that we revert to the back four that's done well. But I bet we don't. If Kyle Walker-Peters is fit, I reckon Manning will get dropped, and Kyle Walker-Peters will play left back and Harwood-Bellis right back. And I don't like messing around with the defence. And I remember saying halfway through the unbeaten run that back four, Flynn Downs and the goalkeeper, that's the reason we've won all these games. That's the reason we'll get promoted if we keep it intact. And I just hope that Russell Martin goes back to that when everyone is available. But yeah, I mean, but you can look at individuals on the goals. Obviously, Bednarek on the second goal, Ryan Manning got caught in field on the first goal, and the third goal, Manning gets beat far too easily by Laird, and when he pulls the ball back, Stevens is with Stansfield, but he still, he's stood right next to him, and he still allows him to get the shot in, which hits the post, and the guy sticks it in at the back post. So there are certainly things that individuals can work on, but I do think it's more of a problem for the collective rather than just individual mistakes.
I mean, Russell said to me last week that he feels this team needs Jack Stevens in it, and so far he has stuck to that. So I just can't see him changing that. He thinks he has to have that in there, and then he will.
I totally disagree, but then I'm not the manager. We won. I don't know how you can kind of say that, bearing in mind how many games we won without him, when he was injured and when he was coming back. So I personally don't believe that. But then
it's a strange one because, like, if you look at his individual performance, Jack Stevens has actually played well in pretty much all the games he's come in. Like, he's doing this weird John Stones role, which is obviously a Man City thing that he's watched on the telly and wants to recreate. But he actually does it well. It's just the equilibrium, the rest of the defence that it falters.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does. He does do some nice things on an individual basis, but it's about the collective, and it's especially in defence. I mean, I'm more of a defence type of guy, and that's kind of what I look at. And I just don't think at the level we're at, we're not Manchester City. Let's get this right. The players we've got are not that sort of level, and much though we'd like them to be, they can't all fit into every system, which I'm sure Russell Martin would like them to. So if you find something that works, I don't see why you'd change it at the back. I really don't. But there we go. At the end of the day, we won the game. So but it's similar to the Huddersfield one. There's a lack of control, isn't there? And it ends up being far more chaotic than it should have been.
There was a lot we made of Flynn Downs missing, Steve, in recent games. Obviously, he was back at the weekend. What was your view on him and his role in the team, and alongside it was Smallbone and was it Stewie Armstrong, I think, wasn't it, in that midfield? How did that work out for you?
I mean, he was solid. Did what he does. And that settled the midfield down completely, I think. Stewie Armstrong didn't have his best game. He was okay in the first half, but went completely missing after the break. But fortunately, Downs and Smallbone had a great game, I thought. 2 assists and was always involved. And it was, I think that's one. I mean, we've mentioned this countless times already this season, and even already this evening, that when Downs is there, it frees Smallbone up to play in a position that actually suits him. And you're trying to play him as in the 6 role just doesn't fit. I mean, he can put in performances there, but it's much less likely than likely that he's going to do so. Whereas in the role that he played yesterday, especially against a side that that is down sort of struggling against relegation, where you're going to have the majority of the ball. I know we have the majority of the ball against most sides in this division, but especially so in this sort of game. And he finds those little pockets of space, and he was excellent, I thought.
Some good goals to get back into the game as well. Which end were you? Did you see the you were at the end for the winner, weren't you? Because it looked like Aribo was going to go and celebrate in the wrong corner of the ground for a little bit, and then he kind of like turned on his heels.
Yeah, either that or he was going to run down the tunnel. I don't know.
I've never seen him turn and run so fast when he realised he was celebrating in front of
going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting seeing being able to watch the highlights sort of afterwards, where I mean, frankly, Adam Armstrong looked miles offside from where we were.
Yeah,
and obviously there were a lot of protests from both home fans and players. But actually, when you see it on the highlights, if you do pause it at the point of Brooks playing the pass, he is comfortably onside. So actually, yeah, credit where it's due. Excellent decision by the linesman. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it's always better when you're celebrating a winner in front of your fans, which is obviously why we're trying to move the away end now at St Mary's. To get rid of those limbs moments.
Yeah, there was a sending off as well, Alfie, which we thought might have changed the game, but maybe not. The challenge on Will Smallbone, was that the correct call? Because I think the managers disagreed perhaps afterwards, as you would expect.
Yeah, obviously you would expect Russell Martin to come out and say that it's the correct decision. I think that the isolated red card itself is pretty harsh. I know he comes in with his potentially studs up and that. It could be harsh, but I'm going to caveat that by saying whether you think it's a red card or not, he should have been booked for strangling Che Adams in the first half anyway. So it would have been a second yellow and a sending off regardless. So it's the right decision to send him off. And yeah, we know that from some of the best managers in history that it's not easy to play against 10 men, and it proved like that again. But yeah, I don't think you can have any complaints that he was sent off.
Straight red for you, Glenn, or not?
Absolutely, 100%. If you look at it, he goes. I don't think he means to, but I just think he's a big donkey. To be honest, I thought that in the game at St Mary's, I thought he was terrible, and that's why I thought he's their captain. That's why I thought we'd have a very good chance of winning yesterday. He goes for the challenge. He almost turns his back on Smallbone. I don't know what he's doing, and he goes for the ball in sort of like a downward stamp motion. So he's not even looking at Smallbone. He doesn't actually. He catches him a little bit, not that much. If he'd caught him flush on the knee, Will Smallbone wouldn't be playing for 9 months. It was as dangerous as you like. It's the sort of thing that wouldn't have been sent off. You wouldn't have been sent off 30 years ago because he didn't challenge him that hard. But that for me was the very definition of a dangerous tackle. Even though I don't believe he meant it, I just thought it was just rubbish play from a rubbish player, to be honest. But I don't know how, as you know, even if you're the staunchest blue nose, that you can dispute that. I mean, most of them were celebrating that he's going to miss the next 3 games, to be honest. And, can you appeal? Hopefully it'll get moved to 6 games or whatever. So, no.
I did enjoy Smallbone's response to it, though. I think Bakuna came in with quite a hard challenge on him off the ball about 10 seconds later. And by the time I'd written the tweet for that, Smallbone went and did the same thing to him and obviously got himself booked for the process. But he had a bit of fight about him. It was a real statement performance. Yeah. Obviously, Russell had to bring him off after that, but I did enjoy that.
And a bit of celebration in front of the dugout as well, Alfie, adding a bit of spice to it yesterday when they thought they got back in it.
Yeah, well, Jay Stansfield is obviously a proper character, isn't he? And he's an unbelievable player. I mean, both times he's played Southampton, I think he's been really good. Obviously, the story of him scoring a hat-trick in his dad's shirt for Exeter is fantastic. So you won't find a football man that doesn't want him to do well, I think. But yeah, I asked Russell Martin about it, and he's pretty happy for that. Apparently, he's a family friend of Matt Gill's, so he's probably given him a bit of leeway on it. I'm sure if it was somebody else, he'd be fucking fuming. But it's good. It's a good moment. It's what football's all about, isn't it? And obviously, when you go on to win, it makes it all the more sweet.
I just want to talk, Steve, as well about the front three, because you've got obviously Che and Brooks and Adam Armstrong all scoring, and we had to be better in the final third, and you kind of felt like, as you said, we could have scored a hatful yesterday, but things were certainly looking a bit more fluid.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I thought Shea Adams had a dreadful first half, but everything was bouncing off of his shins. Passes were going astray, but after the break, he was a completely different player. Everything was sticking, and he was bringing other people into the game, and obviously had plenty of shots himself. He obviously got the goal, but there was another one where he hit the side netting. A couple of others which Birmingham defenders threw themselves in the way of, and the ball deflected, either just dribbled into the keeper's hands or went wide for a corner. So yeah, huge improvement sort of in terms of output from the front three, who have all had little sort of dips over the last week or two. I mean, obviously Brooks is obviously new to the team, and he's getting up to speed in terms of playing this regularly, because obviously he's had very little football over the last 2 years, really, in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, so him putting in a performance from the start is bodes very well, especially with Ryan Fraser out for a little while. It gives us enough options to keep the opposition guessing.
We'll get onto the Liverpool game a bit later, Glenn, but there's nobody that's really kind of like chomping at the bit. They've had a chance to come in and stake a claim, and you get the impression that this is the front three now, isn't it? This is for the last 11 games. This is who we want fit and firing.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Adam Armstrong, it looks, he's had a bit of a rest over the last sort of few games, and as Alfie said, he looked back to his best. He's never the tidiest looking player for me. His first touch disappoints me on numerous occasions, but he's good enough to score goals in this league, and he's done it. And we need him in the 12 games that are left, or whatever it is, to be getting another 10 goals, and then we'll be up there. Che Adams is such a mixed bag, as Steve said. He's had some games where he's looked the best forward in the league, and he's had some games where he's just been atrocious, and it just looks like he's never played football in his life before. And it sounds like it from the game that Steve's describing, that he managed to do both in the same game. No one really stuck their hand up in the Liverpool game. I mean, it was a chance. We'll get onto it later, I'm sure. But the guys in question who could have put their hands up to play up front, they kind of blew it. So no, I think we're looking at those guys, and David Brooks is an excellent addition to the mix, especially with the timing with Ryan Fraser being injured, because he's obviously got a goal in him, which we're missing. Obviously, with Fraser not being there, Dozie's got a goal in him. So in between the two of them, we should have enough options to play on one wing and Adam Armstrong playing on the other.
It was interesting, the other results too, Alfie, with Leicester dropping more points. It feels to me like it's becoming impossible to predict who's going to get these automatics now. And it's so funny how like one weekend can just change it, and all of a sudden we're full of optimism again.
Yeah, it was all over last Saturday, wasn't it? Like these were promoted, and we were down for another season. I mean, you pay attention to the results, obviously, because you want to see it, but realistically, right now, they don't actually mean that much. The fact that there's only 8 points between Southampton and Leicester, who have been runaway league leaders for 10 months, is remarkable. And obviously, as we said before we came on air, Glenn said, we all sort of not wrote Ipswich off because not that naive, but we thought that the wheels were coming off, and they've won 5 games in a row, and now they're right back in contention. So, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting end to the season, and it's going to be a very nervous game at Ellen Road. I'm not looking forward to it.
No, okay. I don't know if you saw the tweet from Lewis Coombs, who said the top 4 have already amassed the points needed to secure a playoff place last season with 11 games to go. It's just a hell of a season this year. I want to do TSP Player of the Week now, because I don't think anybody has kind of played their way into contention from the Liverpool game. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you. Who were the standout players yesterday? Because there's a few names that we could put on the poll.
I mean, Smallbone's the obvious standout. I think 2 assists yesterday, and also that kind of sort of I'll show 'em performance from the completely unwarranted stick he got after one misplaced pass on Wednesday night, which, I mean, frankly, some people in our fan base need to take a long, hard look at themselves. And I include people that were at the game yesterday, because when Ryan Manning went down at one point in the second half, and it looked like potentially a serious injury, there was an older gentleman stood 2 or 3 rows behind me, very audibly started cheering and saying, "Yeah, thank God Manning's injured. We can get a proper player on now." I mean, frankly, that sort of shit is absolutely pathetic, and it's not welcome.
It wasn't me. I hasten to add.
No, he had a lot more stubble than you did.
You spoke to him about that this week, didn't you, Alfie? Was that a piece this week about with Ryan Manning and about the role that and the fans and the stick that you get?
Yeah, to be fair, like Ryan Manning's a lovely bloke. He's always happy to answer any question, and he talks well. And I just asked him, obviously, I think he's been a little bit unlucky with some of the stick he's got at times, and what was his response to it? And he said that at the end of the day, we wouldn't be getting paid to play football if it wasn't for the fans' opinions. So you just have to get on with it. He hopes to prove people wrong, but one of the things he did talk about was that obviously the position he's asked to play, he says it's not a traditional left back like you would play on a Sunday league team. Is the reason he's caught out sometimes is because Russell Martin's asking him to be right up the pitch, involved in the play all the time. Look, obviously he's made defensive mistakes this season, but that is a good point and it is true. But yeah, he's a good lad, and I want him to do well. I cringe a little bit every time he does make a mistake because he's a nice guy.
All right, so we've got Will Smallbone on the list. Alfie, who was your stand-up performer?
I think the best player on the pitch was David Brooks. Will Smallbone's obviously rich in narrative, and I think one of our own, the chants were amazing. But David Brooks showed that he's an absolute class above. He created so many chances in the first half, and then he somehow made it even better in the second with just skipping past his player and a really beautiful finish into the far net. And so David Brooks for me. Yeah,
it was some goal, wasn't it? And Glenn, anyone else you want to add to the list?
No, not really. I was going to say Smallbone and Brooks. Brooks is just a quality player. I can't believe we got him on loan, to be honest. I know. I mean, Bournemouth, through gritted teeth, have absolutely done us a favour there because,
extending hands across the forest.
Yeah, he's such a good player, and to get someone like him on loan, I know obviously with the issues he's had, that's kind of the reason we've got him, to give him game time. They obviously want to do right by him, but to have him come in January to a team that was already performing well, and he's been tremendous in virtually every game he's played. I think there might have been one game that he started where he was a bit kind of disappointed. Can't remember which one that was, but overall he's contributed well to and he also he said when he joined that he wants to earn his minutes, which I think was.
Yeah, it wasn't guaranteed.
Was massive for me. He knew it wasn't guaranteed, and he's done that. I think he's proven probably with that performance against Birmingham that he should be starting, especially whilst Ryan Fraser is injured. So no, I can't really look past him and Will Smallbone.
Great stuff. Now it's a big week before an extended break. 2 home games next. Preston are the visitors on Wednesday. We're going to have an extra midweek pod on Thursday just to review that game. But right now, I'm pleased to say that joining us is Oli Hargreaves from the Butter Pie podcast to help us preview the game. Oli, the first question's got to be the podcast and the name. How did that come about?
This question gets asked quite a lot, actually.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry at all. So how I best describe it is it's a Prestonian delicacy that's only nationalised in Preston. You can get a butter pie on the concourse in Deepdale. Pretty much how to explain it, it's a cholesterol in a pie. It's just butter, potato, and onion, and that's it. So when we were coming together, what should we call? Should we call the Invincibles? No. How about the Butter Pie podcast? Yeah, let's do that. So, we trialled it for a laugh and it stuck. So here we are 3 years later with the same name, having to tell every podcast that we go on that it's about football and not a pie.
Yeah, and I bet everybody says, I really want to try one. I bet that's the standard.
Yeah. Yeah. Next time I go up, I'll make sure to try one. I think we've only had one review, and that was that it was absolutely terrible. But, one day we'll get someone to like it, but not fairly soon, I don't think.
I suppose we ought to talk about the football since you're on. I mean, how things are going, first of all, because from what I was working out today, I don't think you've lost since Leeds back in January. So you must be quite pleased with how things are working out so far this year.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster season. I mean, I say that every season about Preston North End. We go on ups and downs like no tomorrow. Going up to the Leeds game, the run we were on, 5 wins in 23, was abysmal form. It's relegation form, and then the past 7 or 8 games have been absolutely fantastic. Even picking up a point in a 0-0 draw against Hull yesterday, I thought we were absolutely fantastic on the front foot against Hull, who are probably going to be thereabouts for the playoffs. So, it seems that under scrutiny, probably Ryan Lowe somehow finds a way to be able to keep his job by finding the solution to how we're playing, because beforehand it was a bit, player roulette, but he's found his 11 after the January window, which is very much needed, and we're properly playing football, which is really good to see. Some of the football we were playing on yesterday, balls into feet. I've not seen North End play that in so long since Alex Neil. I'm so used to it lumping it all the way up to the big dog up top and him, probably hitting him in the back of the head and flicking it down. So, it's great to see. We've got a couple of abroad foreign players as well, which is, if North End signed anyone who was from abroad, they'd be coming from the League of Ireland 5 years ago. But, it's nice to broaden our horizons, and yeah, it's nice to watch some good football at Preston finally.
And what's the style of football with Ryan Lowe? Because obviously it's getting the results at the moment.
Yeah, so it's a bit mixed match. The style that we're starting to play is we've got our most influential player playing in the 10 called Mads Frocke Jensen, who loves the ball into his feet, and we've kind of started to build that around him. We notoriously play 3 at the back, 3 centre halves and 2 wing backs. So it's quite defensively driven. We try to not so be possession based, but when we come up against possession based sides like yourselves, you may have seen us against Coventry as well, who are they try to get on the ball as much as possible. We try and nitpick and then obviously get our chances by going on the counter attack. With obviously the speed of Liam Miller, who's on loan from Basel. We've got Mads in the 10. We've got Emil Rees. So we're one of those teams that are probably awful to play against, because we're going to sit in a low block and then try to counter attack you at any given point that we get. So that's how I can hope that we're able to get anything against yourselves, is that there's potentially a slip up in the back line and we maybe nick one, but I'm not optimistic.
Does that worry you, Glenn? Talk about the low block and preying on the opportunities. And
before Flynn Downs got back, I was worried about teams that did that and hit us on the counter attack, because we were very, very vulnerable to that. And then obviously recently, teams have had success against us by kind of pressing us high and swarming all over the midfield, and that's really sort of like gave us problems and stifled us, and we lost a couple of games off the back of that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. To be honest, I'd prefer to play against a team that's sitting a low block. I notice you play a back 3. We've got to turn that into a back 5 by pushing the fullbacks back, because I don't usually wingbacks are wingbacks because they're not the best defenders. So if you can force them back towards their own goal, they don't tend to want to go there. So that is certainly something we should be looking at. And then it's down to our midfield to sort of like pick the passes through. But it's obviously when teams set up like that against you, you've got to be patient. And even if it's 0-0 at half time, you've just got to keep doing the things that you're doing, and trust that you'll eventually find your way through. And as we discussed earlier, we do sort of score a lot of late goals when teams get tired. So yeah, it'll be an interesting sort of contrast in styles, and we just got to hope it's not one of those games where we have 80% possession and end up losing 2-0, which is what happens on a bad day when you're playing against that. I mean, I remember the game against Preston earlier on. They weren't shy at leaving a foot in as well, So the refereeing of this game is going to be interesting. I mean, the last game against them, we were obviously very fortunate to get a point out of that at the end with the goalkeeper header, possibly. So yeah, but we're a better side than we were last time around when we played them. And but we've lost the last 2 home games, so it depends what Saints team turns up. But I'm hopeful that we are back more to the lineup that we had in the 25 game run, or whatever it was, 22 game run that we had. So yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, it could be a game to be patient.
It's going to be different, Steve, to that game back in October, the 2-1 that Glen's talking about, that last-minute own goal to rescue the point. It was when we were going through that phase of just being terrible after the break. Do you remember?
Yeah, and also we made, I think because that was another midweek game, and we made, I think, six or 7 changes from the Saturday.
And that was one of the first times as well, wasn't it, Steve? They hadn't really made any changes up to that point.
Yeah, we just looked really disjointed. Got a really good goal from Walker Peters, but other than that, didn't really create a whole lot. It was a bitty game, and then we shipped 2 stupid goals in the space of a couple of minutes, and then we're chasing it, and we basically throw on all the people we'd left out from the Saturday. Still didn't create a huge amount, but at least put a lot of pressure on. And I mean, when you've got a corner in the last minute, if you get the delivery right, then anything can happen. And for once, we did get the delivery right, and Bazunu caused enough chaos to force Ched Evans to stick it in the back of his own net, which was obviously very satisfying. But it was a point we barely deserved, but I mean, it's one of those where you take it and you get the hell out of there. I'd like to think this week's going to be different. As Glen said, we're a different side now. By the sound of it, Preston are a different side. So when we played them back then, the style was a bit different. I think the only other game I've seen Preston play was the Leeds game, which was obviously your last defeat. And I was utterly infuriated watching that when Ryan Lowe made a triple sub with about 15 minutes to go. You were completely comfortable in the game with the 11 that were on the pitch, and you basically took all of your attackers off and brought on defensive-minded players and thought, right, we're just going to stick everything behind the ball. And that's exactly the way Leeds want teams to play against them, because Leeds can then just camp and just beat you with just sort of repetitiveness. They'll always find a way. And yeah, that was very annoying. But it sounds as if he's probably taken the criticism from that on board and has changed things and got them going in the right direction again.
Ollie's nodding. So
yeah. I just love the fact that you said you were totally frustrated. Just having watched one game of North End, and here I am after 16 years of this. Totally awful. Yeah, I mean, the Leeds game. He was under total scrutiny, and the fact that I think anything that he did at that stage where we're in the form, if we kept the attacking players on to try and we were totally comfortable, and they get leggy and we end up conceding, it's going to be on Ryan Lowe. And then if he, made the changes, made us more defensively sound, and it worked, he's a hero. But if it doesn't work, it's his fault again. So I think it was in that stage where he couldn't win. To be fair, he still chucks defensive players on at the end, which is highly infuriating because it means that we're going to just shove everyone behind the ball. But more times out of 10 at the moment, in this run, it's been working. So fingers crossed that doesn't change anything. Another thing I'd mention as well is regarding the low block. What I noticed on Saturday is Hull start are trying to play out from the back. They're very heavily, they don't kick long from goal kicks. And we surrounded their goalkeeper heavily. Now, I'm not too sure if we're going to do that with Bazunu, because he's probably better with the ball at the feet than Allsop. But every time that they tried to play out from the back, we ended up with the ball back after about 20 seconds. So, the press works on that end. If it doesn't work, we'll shove 10 players behind the ball and just sit on outside our 18-yard box.
We're going to have to be brave. That's what I'm reading into this. Alfie, I mean, it's a 3-game week, then it's a 20-day break because of the cup game or Leicester's cup game and that one being rearranged. Do you think we kind of just throw everything at these 2 home games because we need to take that momentum into the break?
Yeah, look, you've got to win all of them, obviously. The thing that Russell Martin has said a couple of times in the build-up to this week has been just about leaving it in a good place. And like you say, they're going to have some decent recovery time that's been much needed after what will it have been, like 10 or 11 games in a month. But they need to win these games. They need to be in a good place. They need to go into that break knowing that there's actually a chance they can catch them and that, they're not out of it. And I think they're in a good place to do that at the moment. The one thing I wanted to sort of point out is that we're talking about sort of Preston playing a low block and sitting loads of men behind the ball, but you have actually scored 2 goals in 7 of your last 10 championship games, 2 goals or more. So they've obviously got a threat, and we saw from the game at Deepdale that there's going to be a threat there. But yeah, have to win every game at the moment. That nothing's changed with that, and obviously all 3 of the other teams are going to play on Tuesday night. So by the time you go into Wednesday, it could be a case that you can move within 5 points of Leicester, or move in 2 points of Ipswich or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'll be watching the games on Tuesday, obviously. So will the team, and then we'll see where we are.
And your aspirations for the rest of the season, Ollie? I mean, anybody from sort of 5th to 9th could probably get the playoffs at the moment. So it's going to be an interesting sort of run-in for the teams in the top 10. What would you be happy with?
I mean, the dream is the playoffs, isn't it? The dream is to nip into that 6th place. And if you're in the playoffs, it's 3 games. It's a 3-game season where anything can go. But for me, ultimately, as a North End fan, I'll try not to get dragged into any positivity. And anything positive off a negative outset is always good. So I'm going to continue to just look conservatively at it and think, probably a top half finish, maybe 8th or 9th, I'd expect North End to be at. But, the way that we're going on, anything can happen, and fingers crossed it continues.
Final question from me, Ollie. Do you know about Russell Martin and Ryan Lowe's relationship and how well they get on or don't get on? Has he said anything about that?
Yeah, that was fun when he was at Swansea. That nice little bust up when he tried to deck Joe Allen. Actually, yeah, two quite hot-headed managers when it doesn't end up going their way, I believe. So it could be a fiery encounter, especially if North End decide to leave a couple on, like Glen said. We do like to be heavy-footed sometimes, so I'm sure it might be a quite hot contest, probably, including the managers on the sideline.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for a score prediction in just a minute, Ollie. Alfie, do you think we'll see Carl Walker-Peters coming back? I know there was sort of a brief update on his injury this week.
Yeah, the message from Russell Martin was that he will hopefully be back for one of the 2 games or both. Russell Martin has always been somebody who has said, oh yeah, he's close. I mean, Flynn Downs was close for 2 weeks before he finally made an appearance. So I would definitely bet against Carl Walker-Peters being back on Wednesday. Hopefully he'll be there for Saturday against Sunderland. But yeah, I think I'd be surprised by that.
All right, let's get some score predictions. Glenn, I'm going to come to you first this week.
I've just remembered something from the first game. We had Mason Holgate playing.
Yeah, I was going to
say that.
Right.
North End shoved on a guy. I might have got his name wrong. Osmajic. They shoved him on at half time, and he picked a fight with Holgate, and Holgate reacted because he's an idiot. And on the back of that chaos, we let in the 2 goals that we were talking about earlier. So I'm hoping that because we haven't got Mason Holgate anymore, and we're a bit more savvy at the back and not quite so reckless, that we managed to stop North End hurting us on the break or otherwise. It'll be interesting if they do try and press from the front, because we have struggled with that a little bit the last few weeks. But yeah, quite confident that we're going to get back to it at home. So I'll go for a narrow and slightly squeaky 2-1 win.
Squeaky win. Alfie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sorry, Glenn, but I'm also going to go for a 2-1 win, just because, as I said about Preston, I think they've definitely got a goal in them, and equally this Saints defence has definitely got a clanger in it. But I'm pretty confident about the results. So yeah, we'll go for a 2-1 win.
Okay, Steve.
Yes, same thoughts. Slightly different scoreline. Yeah, I mean, as pointed out just now, I think Preston have scored 2 or more in something like 7 of the last 10. Was it you said, Alfie?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we've seen what it's weird that we kind of look at the defence as a whole, and actually as a collective, they're kind of playing all right. But then there's these little moments where they switch off, and we've done it against teams good and bad in this division. So I kind of half expect that to continue until beyond the international break, when we have a little bit of time on the training ground to get it sorted. But we've still got the attacking prowess. So 3-2 win.
Nice.
Okay. Oli, it sounds like there might be some goals in this game, unless we've completely misread it. What's your prediction?
Yeah, it'll be a 0-0 after this, won't it? Well, every time I predict a North End win, I'm a very coincidental person. Every time I predict a North End win, we lose. My head's saying a 1-1 draw. I'm going to predict a 2-1 Saints win, just for my own peace of mind, knowing that it might turn on its head. And because
It wasn't your fault.
The old reverse jinx.
I'm an awful gambling man, so if I stuck my money on red, it'll be black every time. So, 2-1 Saints, and hopefully it's the other way around.
And will there be many coming down for the game, Oli?
Midweek, I'd expect a couple of hundred. I wouldn't expect it to be four figures, because it is a fair old trip down to Southampton, especially. A couple of half days off work. So I'd expect maybe 200 to 300. If anything more, then fair play. But we've been in great form, so it could be more than that.
All right, nice one. Cheers for coming on, Oli. Cheers for coming on. That's been a really good insight, and good luck with the rest of the season.
You too. Hopefully not against on Wednesday. Take care, guys.
All right, see you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Bye.
mate.
We will have a special midweek podcast as well on Thursday at 7:15, just to review that game. So
both times we've done that, it's ended in defeats. Let's hope that we can sort of buck that trend.
All we need is the light show on Wednesday night too.
Oh, please no.
There's one more game we just need to cover off before we finish. The FA Cup game, of course. Saints beaten 3-0 by Liverpool in the FA Cup on Wednesday. I mean, we didn't expect to get too much from the game, but I don't know about you, Glenn. It just felt like a bit of a missed opportunity for me, and I can't quite put my finger on why. I think it might have been the finishing.
Yeah, just a little bit. It was, as it turned out, it was a glorious chance to do a few things. One was to see how our style of football would go against a Premier League team, even though obviously they had a load of kids playing. So it was it would have been interesting to see that. And I think from that point of view, we largely sort of like passed the test. We almost had the perfect game plan against what was a scratch Liverpool side. We played out from the back. We played through them on numerous occasions, created 5 or 6 good chances, and missed the bloody lot. And
apart from the one that was offside, obviously.
Yeah, apart from the one was offside, but because everyone had stopped. So it was frustrating from that point of view, and we could have changed the narrative about it all being about Klopp and the Liverpool kids and all that stuff. And it would have been lovely. We should have gone in 2-0 up at half time. But of course, if you miss 5 or 6 chances, they go up your end once, have a shot, it deflects and it goes in, and you're 1-0 down at half time. And then it's completely different. Now, if we had been ahead at half time, I think they had a couple of players on the bench like Luis Diaz and who obviously could have made a massive difference if he'd been shoved on. But I mean, the only chance that we had that I thought was unlucky was Sulemana's side-footed effort that hit the post. I thought, that was a decent effort, but other than that, our finishing was woeful. All sorts of players missed them throughout the game, but it was mainly the strikers. Second half, we had chances at the start of the second half. Again, missed chances from corners and things like that. And then they get the second goal. They put McAllister on, and that made a huge difference because that kind of shut down the midfield. So we stopped being able to sort of like get out as easily. Second goal went in from the mistake by Smallbone, and then third goal didn't matter. And by that time, it was like time to go home, wasn't it? And let's end this now and get back on the road. So it was an interesting game. I was frustrated at the time, but I look back on it now and I'm sort of like less bothered by it because we proved certain things. We proved that this style of football, if you play it right, it can work against better teams. But on the other hand, just a slight increase in the intensity from Liverpool, and some of our players really struggled. And that's really a problem for next season, should we go up. But we know there's going to be sort of like huge turnover if that does happen. I looked at a couple of our players and thought, So it's the first time I'd kind of thought about what are they going to be like at Premier League level. And yeah, nothing new learnt really. The ones I thought would struggle did struggle a little bit. So no harm done from the game, apart from obviously the injury to Kyle Walker-Peters. But yeah, we went up there, we lost, we move on, and it's the league games are far more important.
It was a soft goal to concede too, Alfie, just in the first half. When that went in, you just thought, that was, for me, that was when I thought maybe this is not going to be our night.
Yeah, just a bit of misfortune, really. I saw that Glen Murray, who's obviously a well-respected broadcaster, he said that Lewis Kumas has already outdone his father, who obviously played like however many tens of games for Wales and hundreds of games in the Premier League. I'm not sure I go that far, but good moment for him. Yeah, I mean, they've taken a lot of confidence from that performance, I think, Southampton, despite being beaten 3-0 by, as Glenn said, a team with quite a few young players in. But I thought they did really well. Like the first half, it was really entertaining. Cameron Sulemana, as a child, has obviously been taught to place the ball rather than welly it, because there are a couple of times where you just think, put your foot through it and you might have a bit more luck. But yeah, like Glenn said, they went there, they had a game plan, they performed it pretty well, they just didn't take their chances, and that was unlucky. But I think it was a good evening. And then the last 20 minutes, they were tired. Russell Martin said that he thinks these players were just a little bit frustrated that they'd blown their chance basically, and the heads just dropped a little bit, which obviously, if you're in the Premier League, you can't let that happen. But it was a free hit, and we now don't have the distraction of a game. Whereas, I don't know where Leicester are going, but they've got that to focus on. Saints will have another weekend off. And I'm very lucky that I didn't have to hear the commentary, which I imagine was completely all Liverpool for 90 minutes.
It didn't help that the draw was done just before the game, so they knew that they had the prospect of doing Manchester United versus Liverpool, and that was clearly the one that they all wanted. And it wasn't great. Steve, what was your take on the game? Just that nobody really kind of standing out. You got Mara and Sulemana and people that could stake a claim, and it wasn't really the night for that.
Yeah, there were players that showed little flashes, and you can see the attributes that they've got, and if you can kind of put it all together and have a little bit of sort of improved decision making, then there's the sort of nucleus of something there. Sulemana, if he could finish and cross, in 5 years' time, he'll be a Ballon d'Or candidate, because he's got absolutely everything else, but just the decision making and being able to execute in that key moment is just completely not there at the moment, which is infuriating. And we kind of saw it a little bit in his cameo at St Andrews yesterday as well. In that he got into some good positions, but didn't really actually kind of cause too many problems. Although we weren't. It was more a case of everyone just trying to do something at the time. There was no kind of real order to proceedings. But on Wednesday, I thought kind of everybody kind of showed up to an extent in the first half. And as we say, we could have had 3 or 4. It was interesting to see Van Dijk run a little bit ragged by our reserves. That was something I wasn't quite expecting. Unfortunately, Konate kind of shut that down completely.
He was unreal.
In the second half. He was outstanding, I thought, unfortunately. But yeah, I think the problem with playing our system against the top sides, yes, it was a weakened Liverpool side and all this sort of stuff. But the problem with playing against sides that have got pedigree and they've got these top players, Champions League winners in their side, is that while in the Championship we're getting 70 to 80% possession against teams, we're able to tire them out late in games, and that's why we're scoring all these goals in injury time and in the last 10-15 minutes of games. On the flip side, when we're playing against a side like Liverpool, even though we've had what feels like a lot of possession, it was 50-50. So playing our style of game meant that once we got to beyond the hour mark, we were the tired ones, because we're not used to not having the time on the ball that we've been having this season, and it just made such a huge difference. And you could see that the legs were just gone by basically once that second goal went in, it was like, okay, let's make sure this doesn't get embarrassing now.
And were you surprised, Glenn, that we didn't chuck in a few of the younger players? I can't remember how many changes it was, but it got to the point where they were banging on about Liverpool's kids, and we've got some of our best young players that were sat on the bench, and I was just thinking, well, just get them on as well. They might give it a better go.
Well, I think one of them would have come on if Walker-Peters hadn't have come on and then had to go off, because he wouldn't have wanted Harwood-Bellis to have played that game. So I know Tyler Diblin was on the bench. I saw him. I don't know if Sam Amo was on there as well. So it frustrated me a little bit that I was thinking of Tyler Diblin because he played really well in the last round. I was a bit frustrated he didn't get on, and I had to watch Sekou Mara for 95 minutes, who was absolutely done after about 60 minutes. And Steve makes a very good point about players getting tired, because I mean, Joe Aribo's obviously been away at the AFCON where, as we said a couple of weeks ago, he didn't actually play that much. And he's probably someone who needs to play a lot to keep his level of fitness up. And I thought he was great for an hour, and then he died. And he was sort of like partly responsible for that, for the third goal. It was just like a tired bit of play in the corner. So yeah, original question. It was a bit frustrating that we didn't get the young players on, but I think, I mean, it would have been great for them to have experience at playing at a ground like that, because that's the sort of thing you dream of when you're a young kid coming through, that you want to get on and play something like Anfield, even if you only play for 5 minutes or so. So it was disappointing from that point of view, but whilst it was still 1-0, I guess we still had half an eye on forcing extra time and things like that. But once it went to 2-0, the Walker-Peters thing happened directly after the second goal, didn't it? So you at that stage, sort of making substitutions just to give young players a game was probably out the window. And we have to have an eye on the number of fixtures that we've had recently. So Russell Martin mentions that all the time. So he probably thought it's better to not risk that and rotate the players who he thinks are going to be in the league side over the next few weeks.
I did just want to say that I thought Shea Charles actually had an excellent evening, particularly in transition, moving the ball from the back line to the front. The amount of times he just sort of took the ball back to the opposition goal and turned somebody and played off. I thought he was really good. And it did make me think, why we've been playing a slightly different way for the last 2 weeks when you've got that sat right there. But I appreciate it's different with League and Cup.
Yeah, and we've been asking that question for the last couple of weeks, haven't we? So I know, Alfie, it's easy to say when you win the game, but it sounded to me like Klopp was pretty complimentary about the style of play and Russell Martin and the Championship as a whole.
Yeah, well, it's obviously his farewell tour, isn't it? So that everything is about him right now. And he obviously loves that. He actually, this isn't very professional of me, but I was actually taking a photo of him as he came in with my friends, and he caught me taking a photo, and he just sort of smiled a little bit and did a little bit of a nod and a bit of a Jurgen Klopp sort of thing. He was in good spirits. He said that, one thing he said about Southampton was that the style and identity is obviously very clear with Russell Martin. He name-dropped Russell Martin a couple of times. But the one thing he also said, the second thing he said rather, was that, if Saints stay down this season, they'll be better going up into the Premier League the following year because they'll have played it for even longer. So, I don't know how much Championship expertise he's already got, but he's already sort of maybe pigeonholing Saints for another season in the second division. But he was in good spirits. He was good about Saints. He was good value. Yeah.
Will the selfie see the light of day? Is that going to? It's
not a selfie. I wouldn't do that. Christ, it's just a photo of him. But yeah, they do.
Right,
you're not the moose.
No, exactly.
Thankfully. That's pretty much it for this week. Don't forget, you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. We are at Total Saints Pod. It is great to hear from you throughout the week. It's going to be a busy week too. So if you want to get in touch, drop us a DM or maybe email us via the website if you've got something to share, then we do enjoy hearing from you. As I mentioned at the start, we've got the merch store. Do give that a little look. There's loads of new bits on there. It's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And you'll also find us on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with the monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And each of the tiers comes with those different perks, including weekly shout outs for the patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tier. So thanks to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe, and Mike E, who you'll find in our Francis Benali tier. And also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, we're going to be back on Thursday evening at 7:15 for that extra midweek pod. So we'll see you then for the live stream.